Okay. This is the fifth and final poem in our War Poetry booklet. Short and sweet. This is actually the whole poem right there. The slides for the lesson that accompany this poem are on eLearn. You can access those. It goes through much more detail about this, some of the allusions in this poem. Okay, so grotesque. Firstly, I love the word grotesque. It's very evocative. It's not horrible, it's not hideous, it's not terrible, it's grotesque. It really encapsulates that feeling of, that combination of feelings of it's horrible and it's revolting and it's torturous and it's grotesque. Frederic Manning is also our first Australian author in our little selection, which might make a difference to you. He was very young at the time, so he was in his early 20s when he went to war. But there's a biography available in the slides for the class. So the first thing we talk about, and we talked about this in class, was this allusion, not to be confused with illusion, allusion. So the damn circles that Dante trod. So that is an allusion. It's a literary allusion. Allusion. So to Dante's. So Dante's whole poem was called the Divine Comedy. The first part of the Divine Comedy is called Inferno, which means hell. And in Inferno, Dante is describing his journey through the 9 circles of hell. And again, there's a lot of references to this you can find. It's an extremely well-known piece of literature. And the reason why he can refer to it so obliquely is because everybody reading this poem at that time would have understood exactly and immediately what he was talking about. They probably would have studied it at school. It was one of those pieces of literature that you couldn't really get through school without studying, like Shakespeare, like a lot of the classic canon. So the damn circles Dante trod, so the 9 circles of hell. So we're immediately in a place that is hellish. We're immediately on an arduous, hideous journey, experience. So, with the title and that first line, we're kind of already there. So terrible in hopelessness. I didn't really lean on this in class, but I really feel that the amount of syllables in this one word, the hopelessness, really drives that feeling of no hope, hopelessness. It's not a specific device, I suppose, but more a choice of word, a word choice. And in a short poem, the word choice becomes absolutely vital. And this is what I mean when you're talking about distilling your idea and your thought down into the smallest possible number of words, and leaving yourself with the essence, the concentrated essence of the feeling that you're trying to express. So I'm just going to say word choice here, and what I mean by that is that this word choice, multiple syllables. So it's right, I'll say. And what I mean by that is when you're reading, there we go. Just wait. So when you're reading it, terrible in a hopelessness, it slows you down. You get stuck in that word. Even the skulls have humour. So skulls don't actually have humour. So I'll give that a little underline, and we're going to give that a. You will have answered this already. Personification. So skulls, obviously inanimate objects. Used to be animated, not anymore. So don't have humour. But he's basically saying it could well be that he's literally surrounded by skulls. In this trench warfare in World War One, quite often in a lot of battles, they didn't have time to retrieve dead bodies. There was definitely no time to bury anybody. They couldn't leave. They couldn't take anybody away. So quite often, their fallen comrades were decomposing around them, and quite often new trenches were built through, around, over, on top of decomposing bodies. It's not, it's not unthinkable that in his dugout, in his trench, wherever he happens to be sitting writing this poem, or one of his experiences during this war, he could well have seen a skull staring at him, mocking him, the fact that he's in this hideous situation. And we, the soldiers, sitting with streaming eyes in the acrid smoke. This makes me think about, so this is from the shell fire, could even be gas. And it reminds me of Dulce et Decorum Est, when Wilfred Owen describes that gas attack, and the gas, and the burning eyes, and the all that. But the bombs going off, the shell fire, everything is swirling smoke and fire and dust and dirt and stuff. I really like, so talking about word choice, I really like this. It's use of a vowel. So normally you'd use murky, which is an adjective. But he's actually using it as a verb. So he's taken murky and used it as a verb. So murks our foul, damp billet. Billet being wherever they're sleeping. So it could be improvised. They could be in a farmhouse. But basically where they're sleeping. So wherever they're trying to sleep and recover and recuperate as best they can in between battles or manoeuvres or whatever, there's smoke and there's skulls and there's, it's foul and it's wet and it's revolting. Again, one of the features of trench warfare, and a lot of the references and a lot of the literature details the fact that it was wet, and trench foot was when these guys had been walking around in mud and water for days, weeks, and the skin starts pouring, just peeling off their feet. This trench foot, and so this dampness, because they've dug down into the ground, so that their trenches are at least 6 foot down from just because they're walking around and not being able to be seen by the enemy. So you can imagine they're down underground level, bombs going off, smoke, gas, water, rain. So they're sitting around in their billet. They chant bitterly with raucous voices as a choir of frogs in hideous irony our patriotic songs. Again, word choice here. So they chant bitterly. So they're not singing. He's not saying that they're singing bitterly, they're chanting. That gives me the impression that they're so familiar. It could be a marching song, it could be something they've sung a million times. They're really just going through the motions. So they're going, saying these words bitterly because they're in a hideous situation. Raucous voices, I would say, from gas and smoke and shouting and all the rest of it. As a choir of frogs, they're croaking. Frogs croak. And the hideous irony, they're singing their patriotic songs. So, Rule Britannia, or wouldn't be Advanced Australia Effects, that wasn't invented then. probably trying to, keep the morale up, or maybe just pass the time. But that feeling, so this whole little tiny gut punch of a poem, and that hopelessness, and that treading those circles of hell in this experience. The whole poem seems to have this sardonic sneer on its face. It's like, God, this is just utter hell, and here we are in this, mess, and you can't even breathe properly, and it's wet, and we're singing these patriotic songs about how great and brave and amazing it is, and heroic and everything, to come and fight for our country. Dulce et decorum est pro patria mori. So a short poem has fewer opportunities for poetic devices, but what you can talk about in this one, so you have that illusion, that's a really good one to talk about, the personification, and just perhaps talk about some of those word choices, how picking those particular words, one little word, can create a big impression and be very expressive and be very emotive. I think you can say a lot about this little poem.